Eddie Jones had warned Japan to go to the temple and pray, but it was England who needed help from the heavens. For 50 minutes at Twickenham, it seemed like the miracle of Brighton all over again. Japan were leading 15-10 at halftime and were on course for their biggest victory since the famous World Cup upset against South Africa. Jones was preparing to run for cover in the temple, but his blushes were saved by 3 late tries. This match was supposed to be a gauge of England's depth. Jones fielded an experimental side, featuring 11 new faces, but they were outplayed by their opponents. A short turnaround with 2 training sessions was intended to replicate World Cup conditions, and, with 12 months to go, there is plenty to work on. England scored after 180 seconds, but the early try seduced them into a false sense of security. Armed with camera phones and rising sun bandanas, the Japanese fans arrived in force, burning for next shock. Read one of their banners. Their wishes were almost granted. Powered by skipper Michael Leitch, Japan were sharper in thought and execution. By halftime, they had 77% of the territory and should have been further ahead on the scoreboard. Danny scored the opening try after Elliot Daly, Cokanasiga and Jamie George counter-attacked from a Japanese kick, but England were killed by their discipline. They conceded 3 penalties inside 10 minutes, although Japan turned down the kicks at goal as they bristled with confidence. The Brave Blossoms were living up to their name. Their attack was full of tricks and offloads, while England were slow and cumbersome. After 15 minutes, Jack Nowell was penalised at the breakdown and Fumiaka Tanaka kicked his side's opening points. 8 minutes later, Ryoto Nakamura to score their first try. The centre stood at first receiver from a scrum and, changing his direction, pushed Alex Lozowski off balance to run in. Just 24 hours after the resignation of RFU CEO Steve Brown, another dark cloud was emerging over Twickenham. On the left wing, Kenki Fukuoka ripped shreds out of the English defence. Jones's side barely had a sniff of the ball, and Leitch even joined into an English huddle as the 13-pounds-a-day Tier 2 side antagonized their opponents. "We score an easy try and the players subconsciously think it is going to be easy," said Jones. "We knocked off a bit in our effort and attitude, which is disappointing.England level with a daily penalty from the halfway line, but Japan continued to dominate." Against the All Blacks last week, England delivered one of their best 30 minutes under Jones, but this was the polar opposite. They failed to replicate the same levels of energy and emotion. After 31 minutes, Akihito Yamada freed his arms in a tackle by George Ford and offloaded to Leitch. The flanker bounced off care and evaded Dylan Hartley, on for the sin-bin George, and Harry Williams before sidestepping Daly to score. England were under siege. Chris Ashton was hauled off in the first half with a calf strain, pushing Nowell back onto the wing as his experimental run-out in the centres delivered botched results. England barely had a sniff, with eyebrows raised when Kerr booted the ball into touch to signal the referee's halftime whistle. Rage ensued in the England dressing room, with Jones questioning his players' character rather than applying the hairdryer treatment. "Once you get past 55 years old, you tone it down," quipped Jones, who mingled with Japanese journalists in their mother tongue after the match. "We just talked about the fact we needed more effort and needed to get stuck in. We weren't getting stuck in, and we got stuck in the second half. It was about getting our effort and attitude better, plus a couple of technical things." Jones played his trump card during the break, introducing Owen Farrell in place of Lozowski. England's second-half turnaround was indicative of how indispensable the co-captain has become to the World Cup crusade. Farrell helped increase the line speed, while the attacking play became more direct and the kicking game improved dramatically. "We played like England in the second half," said Jones. "Owen is obviously a forceful character and he came on and did a good job for us. I can only recall Japan in our 22 once, and those stats in the first half were probably the opposite in the second half." Eventually, Japan's discipline started to unravel and Ford narrowed the deficit with a penalty after 56 minutes. Then the visitors were penalized for pulling down them all in their own half and England kicked for territory. They built phases, with replacement Kyle Sinclair tipping on the ball in attack, before Ford set up Mark Wilson for his first ever test try, marking his 50th cap with an almost perfect display from the tee. Ford kicked his second penalty after 65 minutes to give England 8 points of breathing space. All of the pre-match talk had been about debutant winger Cokanasiga. Following his involvement in the early try, The Fiji-born winger played a bit part role until he popped up for England's third try. Courtney Lawes won a turnover penalty to stifle a Japanese attack and, moments later, Cokanasiga scorched down the left following a break from Richard Wigglesworth. "Joe will score plenty," said Jones. "He is a big lad with pace and power and can find the line. He will score a few more at Twickenham down that left-hand side." England scored their fourth after 76 minutes, with Hartley touching down off a driving line-out, but it still felt like